blah, 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 blah. Okay, what the Good morning, Minneapolis. It is Friday, October 30th. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Toussaint Morrison. I'll be your host today for Good Morning Minneapolis, brought to you from On-Site Public Media. And for you haters that made comments on there were too many plants in the last show, well, we've added a few more. So here you go. You can comment on that below as well. In obvious news today, you don't need to be drug-free or sober to deserve food, shelter, and kindness. Somebody please pass that along to Governor Tim Walz, Mayor Jacob Frey, President City Council member Lisa Bender, and all your other elected officials that seem to think otherwise. All right, we're going to start off with local news. Today, KSTP Channel 5 ran a piece on Tuesday saying this.
Some of these protests happened outside the homes of local elected officials, and they're becoming more frequent.
Wow. If you just took that clip in a vacuum, you would think that the people of Minneapolis were in an open, free revolt against their elected officials for no damn reason. But what KSTP failed to show was this.
They're killing our men on the streets. The police, whether business owners are doing it, whether they're letting our men die neglectfully in the jails. It's the same system. The same system that devalues our black men's lives.
Oh yeah, the incessant police brutality, the institutional racism, the inequality that's bolstered Minneapolis to one of the leading cities in the nation for racial disparity in employment, education, and law enforcement. Oh, KSTP.
As his wife tries to stop them from hanging a banner inside the couple's newborn daughter.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. There was a child in Mayor Jacob Frey's apartment? That's wild, man. And people were protesting outside? That's so dangerous. Kind of reminds me of the time when police officers shot into a car where there was a child and ended up killing Philando Castile. That kind of reminds me when the cop shot into a car and rendered Jacob Blake paralyzed from the waist down, and there were 3 children in the car. It couldn't have been as dangerous as that, right? And the thing about that was the child was in an actual apartment, shelter, which is what the people outside of it were protesting about, is that the fact that the unsheltered population in Minneapolis has hit an all-time high, and it seems that the elected officials, the mayor included, are doing not only nothing about it, but determining who gets shelter and who doesn't, as winter is just around the corner, and assuredly, people are going to be in harm's way as the temperature drops. So the people protesting outside of Frey's apartment were protesting for the city commissioners to purchase more hotels and vacant buildings for shelter. And there was a banner that was being put up outside of his apartment that goes in tandem with demands and a letter to the mayor and other elected officials that was released last week that reads, "Those of us who are writing this, for some reason, do not qualify for county-owned hotels because we are not considered to be at high risk of dying of COVID. The truth is, everyone who is unhoused is at a high risk of dying of exposure, illness, or violence when we are forced to be out in the cold, especially when winter came faster than we thought it would." The letter continues with demands. "Buy hotels, which can give us the basic necessities that every human being on earth deserves. More public housing in Hennepin, Dakota, and Ramsey counties. Convert vacant buildings into housing." The list goes on. The issue is this, is that the counties are determining who gets hotels and who doesn't. And although they're doing it with the message that, oh, we're protecting people from COVID, Mayor Frey has had well over 2 years to address this issue. And the funny part, or not so funny part, is that Mayor Frey ran on the message that he was going to deal with affordable housing, yet here we are, people outside of his apartment addressing affordable housing. This is extremely problematic because this is a mayor who ran on a message of equitable and affordable housing and is now responsible for the highest unsheltered rate that Minneapolis has ever seen. So if he doesn't do it, then people outside of his apartment are going to demand it. You can read the full letter posted by TC Encampment Responder below, and I believe that TC Encampment Responder reposted it, but you can see the origins of the message, and we're putting the link to it below. And if anybody has any corrections, please DM us or just post it in the comments and we will amend it right away. No, we're not done. Jay Coles of KSTP writes, "In recent weeks, the homes of Frey, Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman, Minneapolis City Council President Lisa Bender, and Minneapolis Police Federation President Bob Kroll have all seen protests with some of them threatening," writes Jay Coles. Maybe it's threatening like Bob Kroll in 2002 when he used excessive force on an elderly couple when he broke into their home with a no-knock warrant. Maybe it's threatening like Bob Kroll's neck. It's important to point out that each of these elected officials are failing or have failed at doing their job. And that's why people are pulling up to say and demand that they can do better. Mike Freeman, where do we start? Jamar Clark, John Ripple. Mike Freeman is supposed to prosecute the police that are out there killing people, yet he defends them more than he prosecutes them. Mike Freeman is so bad at being an old white racist man that another old white racist man, Judge Cahill, reprimanded him and called him sloppy. You're being bad at your racism, Mike. Lisa Bender stood in front of droves of white people at Powderhorn Park and decried that she would defund the police. Lisa Bender stood in front of droves of white people at Powderhorn Park and lied to them because now she's walking the whole message of defunding the police backwards. She didn't show up to Black Lives Matter when Terrence Franklin was murdered right in her ward in the basement of an uptown house in 2013. She didn't show up for Black Lives Matter when Philando Castile was murdered in cold blood, but she did show up for Black Lives Matter when George Floyd made national headlines and started a worldwide movement while he was filmed. It kind of sounds like she only shows up when she has to be accountable. It's also important to point out that Lisa Bender is a staunch advocate for affordable housing, yet in her ward, it is becoming one of the most unaffordable places to live in Minneapolis, with properties being bought out by Chicagoan landlords, slumlords, and many of the apartments being rented by young white renters who most likely order their books on Amazon. Bob Kroll, are you ready? Buckle up. Ethical violations. Rides in a motorcycle gang that dons white power paraphernalia. Called Keith Ellison a terrorist after learning about Keith's Muslim faith. Used a homophobic slur against a staffer for RT Ryback. Was racially discriminatory against black cops for overtime during the I-35W bridge collapse. Okay, what the f***? How does this guy keep failing upwards? I know we talked about white men failing upwards before, but this is like impressive. Bob Kroll looks like the last level boss of a side-scrolling video game from Sega Genesis. Bob Kroll is getting rewarded for being racist. I don't know any other people that get rewarded for being racist except... Okay. Oh, that checks out. Okay. Back to the lecturer at hand, J. Coles, who was also seen on 38th in Chicago recently just before posting a report about the Public Works for White Public survey regarding 38th in Chicago. And we're back here again. Right back. Yeah, I can't. Okay. Quick rundown. Minneapolis police murder George Floyd. Everybody, black folks, community folks, people surrounding are traumatized and righteously upset about what happened. The city returns and says, hey, we're gonna lift these barricades. Everything's all good, right? You guys are pacified and you're tired of marching in the streets. Traffic's gonna come through. Everybody in the intersection says, absolutely not. No justice, no f***ing streets. Enter Public Works for White Public, saying, hey, we're gonna hand out this survey to winterize 38th in Chicago. Really convenient time for us to show up, right? So you gotta fill out the survey with 3 options. Each of the options are opening up the street. Which one do you want? 64% of the people who took the survey didn't know any better, and they just took the survey. The rest of the people said, the hell out of here with this, and said no justice, no streets. Enter J. Coles, who says, look, 64% of these people say the streets should be opened. No, they didn't. 64% of the people took the damn survey. Everybody else said no. The hell out of here with that. This narrative is so bad and the reporting is so poor and KSTP is so just... J. Coles, I mean, he's like the type of guy that runs a white crime watch group. J. Coles is the type of guy that if you asked him, how do you feel about Jim Crow? He would say, man, I love those guys in Dumbo. J. Coles is the type of guy that says, hey, you're telling me to call you black now? Before it was African-American and before that it was colored. Why can't I just use the N-word? Look, this is just to say that the reporting is somewhat abysmal and it is not representing the people whatsoever. Talk to the people on 38th in Chicago. Don't just show up and then vouch for Public Works. Like, actually speak to the people and give a well-rounded report. This stuff saying that people are showing up to elected officials' houses and making threats is just playing down the actual cause of everything, which is police brutality, white supremacy, and institutional racism. Jay, my guy, just speak to that. We don't want to bog you down with all this bad news, but there is good news. Chile is rewriting their constitution. Yes, this is a good thing because the past constitution was written by a dictator that the U.S. put into power after murdering the democratically elected socialist Salvador Allende 47 years ago. Look, Francisco, I know that you're really busy driving around, which seems like for an eternity, and we don't really know where you're going. But can you tell us who is rewriting this new constitution for Chile?
The people of Chile voted on a board of 50% women, 50% men to rewrite this constitution, none of which are currently elected officials in Chile. Yeah.
No elected officials allowed in the rewriting of the Constitution? That's badass, man. What do you think the future is going to be of this Constitution?
This new Constitution is going to focus on basically everything that Pinochet's regime obstructed. So it's going to focus on racial justice for both the Mapuche and Aymara tribes, peoples of Chile, and it's also going to focus directly on gender justice and directly address the feminicidios that are taking place in Chile, but also across Latin America.
And it's also important to note that the international struggle for liberation has looked to Chile for inspiration, borrowing phrases like El pueblo unido jamás será vencido, which means the people united will never be defeated. But Francisco, tell me about that one protest that they would do when they get out the car and start dancing.
It's called El que no baile pierde. So the people are marching in the streets, and if a car comes, they block the car and start chanting it, and they won't move until the person in the car gets out, starts dancing with the protesters and chanting alongside them.
Hey, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, myself included, you gonna paint your face with Dia de los Muertos? Francisco, you cheeky son of a gun. All right, that's gonna do it for us at Onsite Public Media. Today is Friday, October 30th. This has been Good Morning Minneapolis. My name is Toussaint Morrison. Thank you so much for tuning in. We do film in my kitchen. We're trying to get an actual studio. So if you want to donate to Onsite Public Media, please do that below. There are some events going on in Minneapolis. The event links are going to be below as well. Again, we just can't thank y'all enough for the support and the love and the viewership and the sharing and the reposting. Y'all are awesome. If there's anything else you want us to talk about in the next Good Morning Minneapolis, please send it to us in a DM or put it in the comments below. All right, we're out of here. Peace.